Hey, so today we will pick up on implementing the first version of the Yew application, so just a basic front end. So we'll be building on what we did in the previous video and start getting a first version of the wallet up running. And if we switch to the desktop view here, so will be chapter 2 in the book that I'm writing. And we'll go through the steps here one by one on how to set up the project. So let's go back to our terminal and navigate into the application folder. Oh, wait, let's see. So we have here the applications folder. We navigate to that one. And we want to work on the front end today. So today's video is all about the front end. It's about getting your foundation up running such that you can start building the UI for how you're interacting with things. And so the very first thing we want to do is we want to add Yew, and we're going to have the features CSR, which is client-side rendering. We could also add server-side rendering, but this is an advanced topic that we'll do at a later point, not in this video. Then we want to be able to do routing, and for that we want to do yew-router. So add that into the dependency graph. We also eventually want to do some state management. This will be in the next video, not in this video, but we add this now as well, just such that it's done. And then we obviously need to interact with the web browser that we are working with. And so for that, we are adding the WebSys component. We have some features. Oh my goodness, hard to spell features. Document. And so each of these features amount to a specific capability that you want from the WebSys environment. So in Rust, it works like this, that you don't, by default, you don't have any of the web browser's API available to you. So we use this package or crate called WebSys, and we enable the features that we want to use for each of these ones. And we want the HTML document, we want document, we want to be able to access some of the DOM, and I think that should be pretty much it. Let's see, that seems like something went wrong here. Oh, right, I misspelled document. Let's just fix that. Okay, there you go. So we've added that now. And finally, we want to make life easy for ourselves, so we're going to add something called OneUp UI. This is a UI component library I've written for you, which contains a bunch of standard components and will just make our life a whole lot easier when we need to get started with this. So the point here is it's basically similar to Tailwind UI, but then for Rust, or maybe more accurate, it's similar to ShatCN for Yew applications. Okay, we've added that now. Let's get to our code editor and just go to the main file and delete what's already there. So we're going to use Yew, prelude, and we're just importing everything here. So function components in Yew works a little bit like function components in React. So you define a function, and that function returns some HTML. And inside you have this HTML macro that will make your life nice and easy. We're just going to do a hello world here. And then finally, we're going to define our main function. Okay, and we will also need an index.html. And so inside this one, we're telling it we are going to use Tailwind CSS. So these link link objects that we have here tells trunk, the tool we installed in the previous video, that we are going to use Tailwind CSS. It's also telling you that we will have a directory assets where we will keep our assets, and we need to copy that into the final package that we are building. Okay, then we want to set up Tailwind CSS, and this just follows a normal Tailwind CSS init. So this is completely similar to how you would do it in JavaScript, except that something went wrong here. Let's just see, am I missing NPX, or is something else wrong here? Failed to execute. Did I misspell something? No. Okay. Let's just check what went wrong here. Could not determine. Not determine the executable to run. Okay, maybe I need to do nvm and then select a version. Right, let's see. Nvm, that's okay. Let's see. Let's just try to follow these steps instead. Okay. And I think we should be able to run this one now. Okay, we have created that. So basically, these are the steps that we will be using instead. So that's good to know. We need to update the book to actually following these steps. Okay, so that should be it. Let's see. We now have our Tailwind config, and we'll just update this one. So inside that one, we are going to add some content here. And so basically, OneUp will create this Tailwind CSS.txt, and that will create a list of all the classes that OneUp is using. So depending on how you configure OneUp it will be using different classes. And so to make sure that you're only using the ones that are actually relevant for the package, it creates this text file. So we need to include that one here. Let's see, what else? Then we need to go to Tailwind CSS. Did we already create that file? We did not. So let's create that one. And we'll just add the normal components here. So nothing surprising. Right. Let's just check. See what happens if we run cargo build. Actually, we should run trunk build, not cargo build. Let's just check that everything is building as it's supposed to at this point. All right, look at that. It seems like it's compiling. Okay, let's just try to do trunk serve just to check that things are working for us. So it's done. It's building one up UI. And it's finished with that, and in just a second we'll get the message that it's serving the UI. So let's just check. Right, we need the address here, so it's served on port 8080. Hey, will you look at that? Hello world. It does seem like it doesn't include Tailwind CSS. Let's just have a look at that to be sure that it does that. Okay, it does. It just hasn't compiled any of the classes. So let's just, for the sake of, we have the classes here, so that should be fine. We might just need to compile this one extra time. Let's see, we end up there, target. Let's just try to run it again. See. Starts building everything, rebuilds Tailwind CSS. That's interesting. Oh, wait. That's because we obviously need to also have this one or not. Let's just check. This is a bit strange. I would have thought that the double star would also look in the... But maybe it doesn't. Let's just check that. Oh, there we go. Look at this. Hello world. Okay, so we're in business. This is great. Okay, so that's another thing that needs to be updated in the book. We need to make sure that we have this one, because this one only looks, so the source/double star will only look in the subdirectories. And so we have defined some classes in the main directory here, or right as a leaf under the main source directory. We need to have this included. So that's a great update in the book, just to get that fixed. And right, let's see. Okay. Just taking some notes here. Okay, but look at how easy it actually was for us to set up a very, very simple UI with some nice colors and using things that we know, right? It's Tailwind CSS. If you look at the source here, it's just HTML. And yes, the syntax is a little bit different from TypeScript, but it's not overwhelmingly hard to do. Like, it's kind of different. You write the HTML directly. Unlike React, you write class equals instead of class name. But other than that, it looks and feels pretty much like if you would be building a React application. So it's pretty straightforward. With this done, we can move on to the next step, which is to create our configuration crate. And so our configuration crate is something we will be using across all the crates to define such things as routes in our application. And we want to make sure that when we're having a wallet application, that is access to what routes we have inside of our application, or likewise when we are having a login or in any other kind of crate, we need to have all the different routes and they need to be accessible. So we're separating that out into its own module in such a way that each of these crates can have access to them. Okay, so we're going to do what we did yesterday, cargo new, and then we're just going to call this one app config. It's a library, so we do --lib. Right, what did I do wrong here? Oh, it has to be new, doesn't it? New, right. Right. Then inside this one, we have the lib. And I guess at this point, we probably want to take these ones out, move them down into the workspace. And just do workspace.dependencies. And then likewise here we will do and so while we do that, we are just going to enter the app front end just to check that we have done everything correctly. Okay, so what this step does is it moves the dependencies that we had inside the crate down into the top level. So we now have this in the workspace itself. And this makes sure that we are using the same version of the libraries across all of the crates that we will be developing. So all of the components we're developing will be using the same OneUp UI, the same Yew version, the same Yewdux version. And this makes sure that your code doesn't get as big as it should, and it makes sure that you don't have conflicting versions. It's just a really, really neat way of managing your dependencies. And we've done this correctly. It compiles. So that's great. Getting back to our app configuration. So the reason why we did this step now is because in our app, we want to have Yewdux as well. Or yew-router, sorry. We're just going to add yew-router workspace equals true. And then inside the library itself, we're deleting what the initial code that was there when we created it. And then we do use yew-router prelude, and we're just importing everything here. Okay, cool. So with that included, we will start defining our routes. And so we have here routable, partial EQ, clone, and debug. So if you're not familiar with these macros, so whenever you do a hashtag in Rust, you are basically invoking macros. And so what macros are is it's basically auto-generated code. And so what this does is it says, okay, I want to invoke a macro, and the macro is a subclass of derive, and that derive has, we have different kind of things we want to derive. So for instance, we can derive what does it mean to be partially equal to something else? What does it mean to be able to be cloned? And these macros basically is just importing boilerplate code and writing all the code for you without that you have to do anything. So it's super handy. Because otherwise we would have to write a whole lot more code than we have to do now. And it's the same thing we saw here, right? So here we are telling it, okay, we are creating a function component here, and we're going to call that function component app, right? And then we just do the implementation here, and the macro here will make sure that everything else just works for us. We don't need to worry about all the underlying functionality and how it's all put together. It's a really, really neat way. And unlike TypeScript, all of this is happening at compile time. So you're generating all of this code and making sure it all works together way before you run it. Whereas in TypeScript, you would do this at runtime. You would first figure out, oh, these things actually doesn't fit together at runtime. Okay, getting back to our routes, we are just going to add a single route, and that will be our dashboard. And what is it complaining about here? Oh, right, that's me who can't spell partial. Let's see, let's also just add you here. We're going to need that eventually. Okay, getting back to our front end, we can now add the app config, but rather than specifying a specific version, we can do this in tree. So we do now do -- because we are going 2 levels up, front end, app, and then it's app config. So that's where our app config is located. And with that, we are ready to start building out our initial structure of the dashboard. So we go back to front end, and we now do src components. So we need to have a components directory where we'll keep all of this. And the first thing we'll create is just a sidebar. Okay. So we'll use OneUp UI for this. And we're just going to import everything from it. We will use Yew. And we'll use our app route. What did we call it? Did we call it route or did we call it app route? We called it app route. Okay. So these will be the things. What is it? Not included in. Let's just check out if this compiles. Right. So we right. Okay. So we have defined just some basic imports here. We're also going to define the module for components. And so inside the module, that's where you define what things are included in this module. And so we're doing pub mod sidebar menu. What this tells Rust is it tells Rust that the module components has a module sidebar menu, and sidebar menu can now be imported for anything that imports the components. We still need to define the components, and we do that here. Okay, let's just go back and check that this actually compiles. So we do trunk build. Just to check that we got the... Okay, so there's something wrong here. What is it complaining about? Oh, app route. That should be app config, obviously. So let's just do that, update that app config. So that was why we got the little curvy things under it. Let's try this again. All right, our config is correctly installed now. And so we're ready to go on to the next bit, which is creating the actual function component for the app menu. And so this follows exactly the same structure as we did for the main app. We are saying this is a function component, and we will add some HTML. Now, from the OneUp UI, we have a bunch of different components. So we have a sidebar column, we have a sidebar heading, we have a sidebar menu, and we have sidebar links that can link to the different routes. And so you see, unlike React, some of these things are templated or generics, right? So sidebar link is a link to a route inside our app. And so to indicate this, we have this double bracket. So we first have the sidebar link and then a bracket, triangular brackets to say that we're using the app route and it will go to the dashboard. Okay, and this will just be the wallet. And then we have a SVG for the wallet. Okay, then we create the actual app sidebar. And this follows pretty much the same structure as we did before. We include one-up UI. We include Yew prelude. And this time we're going to create a component that has some properties. So this is new. We haven't done this in the previous steps. But as you can imagine, just like React, you will often want to create stateful components that takes in properties from the parent such that they can be modeled accordingly. And so to do this, we're going to create a struct that has the derivative properties, and we need to be able to compare two sets of properties, which is why we need the partial EQ derivative. Then another very useful macro is prop or default. This will tell you that we are creating a property for this component. But if it's not given inside the code by the parent, we're just going to default it to whatever the default is of this children. So children is a struct that you find inside of Yew, and it basically is the children that you might have inside two tags, right? So you have the opening tag and the closing tag, and in between that, you may have a bunch of children. And so children is a type that is a representative for those types. We will also just add the app sidebar to our module. Cool, and then we're going to define the actual function component here. Okay, so this is one of the things where we have a slight difference to how things are working in TypeScript and in particular in React. So when you create a new function, you can pass things to the function in different ways. You can move things into the function. In that case, you wouldn't have anything here. You can add an ampersand, which means that you're borrowing the properties to this component. And what that means is that you're basically passing it in by reference. But in either case, none of these are mutable. Then we could also add a mutable thing that will, or a mutable keyword that will tell Rust, we intend to make changes to the properties. Okay? Right. Okay. So for this app sidebar, we're going to use a layout context, which uses use context. Layout context. And so layout context is a context that's provided by one-up UI and mobile menu open. And so what this context does is it has a bunch of useful properties that tells us something about how is the layout of the application currently set up. Then we will also create a open mobile menu. And so here comes one of the tricky things about Rust when you're moving from TypeScript. So in TypeScript, you pass everything by reference, and you don't really need to care too much about memory. In Rust, the standard is that you're moving things into the new scope of where you want to be. So we're going to create a callback function that's going to use this context. But the problem is that if we create the callback now and we just pass context in, what will happen is that context is moved out of the scope of the app sidebar and into the callback function. So instead of doing that, we will need to make a clone of it and then pass the clone in, because that makes it the original layout context stays within the context of what we're doing here, or within the scope of what we're doing here. And so now we're creating the callback, which we just use a closure for, and then wrap it in this uCallback function. And then inside here, we're doing layout context.dispatch, and then layout action set mobile menu open and menu mobile menu open. Okay. So what this callback does is it takes the context and it just toggles whether the mobile menu is open, right? So we had this original property which we read from the context. Then we take that, move it into the new scope here, and then we just set the mobile based on that. One thing you'll notice here is the move keyword. So the move keyword basically tells Rust that these variables that we're using inside of this closure will be moved into the new scope. If we removed move, they would be passed in as references. This would cause a problem because the references would outlive the scope of the function. So therefore we need to make these copies and move them in. This is one of the harder concepts for people who are coming from TypeScript, who needs to learn Rust, because it's radically different from how we do things in TypeScript. But it's also one of the reasons why Rust is so powerful, because it's super efficient with memory, because you are at every step deliberately designing what am I going to do with my memory. Whereas in TypeScript, you're just like fire and forget. I'll do something and hopefully the runtime will figure out what to do with it. Okay, last bit is we're going to define the HTML around this. And that's going to be rather straightforward. We're importing this multi-column sidebar from OneUp UI. And what this does is it just allows you to create multiple columns within a layout context. So you have your sidebar and you have your main context, and then you can create these sidebars. And then we have a curtain. That's the blackish thing that comes when you open the menu. We just define what does that look like, and then we add the properties into this. For now, we're not going to use this mobile. Oh yes, we do. Sorry, I'm a bit confused here by myself. So inside this one, we have a close button, and that close button will be using this open mobile and just toggle the state. All right. Now we've defined the sidebar. The next thing we need to do is to create the actual layout. And we're going to import the components we just made. We're also going to import the OneUp UI components again, and we're going to import the Yew components. Cool. Like the previous things, we will define the layout. Declare the layout in the module. And with that, we are ready to create the properties of the layout. Okay, let's see. props, and like the previous one, we are adding the children as properties to this struct. So this makes that we can now create a function component, app layout. And so the app layout is just going to be a public function, layout. And just like the previous, we're going to have the properties, which is just going to be app layout props. And we're returning HTML. And we're just using some boilerplate code from this one-up-UI that uses a layout. It toggles the sidebar. Inside the sidebar, we're using the sidebar app. The sidebar we have defined with the app menu we have defined. We are deciding what the direction of the layout should be. It's vertical, and then inside this, we're having a container. We're using a container variant that's responsive. This will all be available, or this is all available in the one-up-UI documents, how each of these variants are working. I'll not go into depth here around that. That's not the key core of this live stream. But anyway, we've created the main layout here. And with that, we are ready to go to the main function and start importing stuff. And we'll import the app layout. We'll also import a few things we need from the one-up-UI. So we need to have we're going to add a dark mode provider because we want our wallet to be able to change whether it's dark mode or light mode. We're going to have a layout provider and a layout state. And then finally, we're having a notification provider and a theme provider. So the theme provider is basically what makes that we can change different parts of the theme. The notification will make sure that we can make notifications inside of our app. And the dark mode provider will make sure that we can change the color of the app. And the layout provider makes sure that we can change the layout state. And let's see. The first change we will make here is we're going to make a render function. So this is what we use to switch on the route. Right, so the render function takes in a route, and so this is an app route. You don't need to specify this, so Rust will figure this out by itself. But we're creating a closure here which will switch on the route function, and then we just do a. Oh wait, actually I was a bit too fast there. We are doing a right. Okay. I'm messing a little bit up here, mostly because my notes were not entirely clear. So we're doing a closure here. We're going to match on the route. And for clarity, I'm just going to write this out like this. We are then adding a wildcard. So basically the underscore just means match on anything. And that will return a HTML. And then we do app layout and / app layout. And then we do placeholder for content. All right. Cool. So you'll see here, Rust actually reformatted this. I initially had this looking like, like this. Something like that. Let's just do some indentation here. Right. But what Rust does is it removes the brackets and actually makes this into a single line. So it says we're making a closure and we're immediately matching that and returning whatever is in the match. So Rust has this thing that if you are defining something that does not end with a semicolon, that's treated as a return value. You don't need to explicitly write return and then the value. Okay, and then we will use a little bit of boilerplate code from one-up-UI. It basically just adds the theme provider, it adds an initial state with the sidebar folded, it adds the dark mode provider, the notification provider, and then the browser router. This is from yew-router. And then we're switching on the app route using the render function that we have just defined here. And I think we have a minor issue there, or maybe that's just because it hasn't rechecked. But I think that should be pretty much it. Let's try this out and see how it works. Okay, so something went wrong here. Oh, we forgot to import app route in the main function. Let's just do that. Otherwise, it's kind of hard for Rust. And you'll also see it's super good at telling you what you did not do, right? So whenever Rust discovers that there's something that's missing, it is super good at figuring out, coming with suggestions to, hey, what did you actually forget to import here? And so you see, it figures out that we forgot to import yew-router. It figured out that we forgot to import browser router. And so we're just importing these ones, and we can just copy paste these ones. This is also one of the reasons why Rust is such a strong language for to use with LLMs, because it comes with very clear suggestions, and a lot of times these suggestions are actually correct. Layout. We have a mistake in our layout. We're having a semicolon where there should not be one. And right, that's here. Let's see, how did this fix things for us? Oh, we forgot to define the return type. Let's do that. HTML. And because of that sidebar app menu, right, are we having some? Right, we have misnamed this one. So that should actually be called app menu. So I have some naming issue here. So the question is, should I call this app sidebar, app menu? I think app menu is probably more accurate. So app menu. Oh. And then probably I should change the file name as well, shouldn't I? On option, okay, so did we forget? Let's just do expect. So what you see here is that use context returns an option, right? So unlike TypeScript, we do not have the concept of null, but we have explicit types that are options. And so use context returns an option, and that option may be none or it may be something, right? We can unwrap that one by doing expect, because in the way we are using this, we always expect this to be there. There should be no way where it's not there. And then we're just adding missing context or missing layout context. So what this will do is it will expect this to be something. And if it's not, it will panic and it will crash the application just saying you have forgotten to add the layout context, which will make it super clear where the error is. And now this error here would hopefully go away. Okay, let's go back and see how we're doing on the compiling things side. We still have a couple of issues, and the first one is Sidebar. Oh my goodness, I am completely messing up here. Oh, I am so sorry about this. So let's just redo this. So this ought to be HTML. This ought to be expect missing layout context, and the app sidebar app menu is here, right? So it's not that we misnamed something. That was me confusing myself. It's actually that this one is located elsewhere. And so if we go back to our main function, and so why would it say this? Component sidebar menu. Let's check this out. Okay. So we have the app menu. That one is in sidebar menu. But we don't use app menu in here. That should be in here, or what? Where's it actually complaining about this? So that's in the layout. App menu. Menu. Okay, why is that one not? Menu, why is that one not defined? Resolved import. Okay, I feel like there is some trivial mistake here. Oh, okay. So it seems like it was just caught in a bad state. Let's see what happens if we refresh here. Okay, cool. We have now something up running here. We have our placeholder for context. We have our menu. We can change the state of the menu by adding false here. And with that, it should compile again. And so one of the things here is that every time we do changes, it does a full compilation of the system. It checks a ton of things that could go wrong. And you'll see in just a second here that we will reload the thing. And now it has expanded the main menu. Okay, so with that, we have the basic layout of our wallet up running. And we're now ready to start building out the next part of this wallet, which we'll do in the next video. Well, actually, oh wait, I had actually more stuff planned for this video. Right. So with this, we have the basic layout up running. And the next thing we want to do is we want to add a few more routes to the whole system. And we go back to our routes that we have defined here. We then do add. We'll have a couple of views. Add transfer. We will have add transactions. So in our wallet, we want to be able to do transfers. We want to be able to list the transactions we have done. Okay, and the next step for us is to add this into the switching on the routes and to add it into the sidebar. So let's go back to our main menu where we have the switch. And we're just going to update these ones and do app route, dashboard, And with that, we are going to do, oh, okay, so we've added now 3 routes to the system. And why is it complaining about this one? Expected a comma, right? Yeah. Let's see, did we forget to save the other file? Transfers. That should have been transfer. Okay, cool. And so notice how Rust constantly just tells us about these little mistakes we're making. It is super good at just identifying them really, really quickly and making sure that we get those bits correct. Okay, last bit, we're going to the sidebar menu. We'll just extend this with a couple of links to these new routes. We added transactions and we're adding transfer with icons. Okay, we now have our 3 items here and we can easily switch between them. So we now have we really have the foundation of our wallet here with the things we want to do. We want to be able to get an overview of the wallet. We want to be able to do transfers and we want to be able to see what transactions have we done in the past. So that layout is now in place. And with that, we are ready to go to the next level, which is starting to create the structure for the screens that we want to do. And I actually initially thought that this would be the next chapter, but I just realized that this chapter is far longer than I thought it would be. So that's great. We will get somewhere today. Okay. Let's go to the screens, wallet screens. So remember, the underscore screens is where we have all of our UI components. And we will create some initial structure here. So we'll create source components, common, dashboard, transfers, transactions, and services transactions. So these are all different parts of the screens that we will be building out over the next couple of videos. And we will also just create or touch a few files here to make sure that we have all of the things that we need in place. That's just going to make things nice and easy for us. So there's really not much to it. We're just creating empty files here to make sure we have the basic structure. And so with that, if you go back here, let's close some of all of this. And we now look at the wallet application here. You'll see we've created all of the structure. Initially, it was just lib.rs, but we now have the components, we have the common, the dashboard, the transactions transfer. All of it, we've created all of the files. They're all empty, so there's nothing in it. But we have the structure now for what we will be doing in the coming chapters, and also in this particular chapter. Right, then we have the main library, and so in this one we will define our 2 top-level components, which is components and its services. Right, and we're going to re-export everything. Then we want to add a QR generator. because we want it so that you can scan your QR code, scan your wallet when you want to send from one wallet to the other. We want it so that the receiving wallet can show a QR code of where the funds should be going. So we do cargo, add and this will be the first component that we are making. So that's the QR code in here. We then use this. So we've imported the create QR generator, and we're going to do QR code ECC. Also use yew. And then defining this. We start out by defining the properties as usual. Prop struct, QR code, props, prop data, string, prop size. And so the data is the actual content of the QR code, whereas the size will be an option on how big do we want this QR code to appear on our screen. Then defining the component. And again, this is just a function component. We could have chosen to do some of these ones as class components, very similar to React, but we're not doing that because just like React, class components is just so much more complex. There's so many more moving components, but you get so much more control. But in most cases, it's complete overkill for what you want to do. And so for what we are doing here, we want these things to be as simple as possible. So we're just doing function components for now. But if you have time, I would encourage you to look into class components as well, because they're really cool and you can do a lot of really nice stuff with them. Okay, so let's get the size. The size is either props.size. And now we are going to unwrap. So remember, option means that we either have something or we have nothing. And so if it's none, there will be nothing. If it's something, there will be a value we can extract. Right? So unwrap basically just means take whatever's in something, but then we can unwrap or, which means if there is nothing inside of this one, take this value instead. So we're doing unwrap or, let's see, 128. That seems like a good number. QR code generator. Okay, here we're using the library to generate the QR code with a few different settings on how this is actually generated. So we are generating to SVG to string, which should give us a string, and then next step is to turn this into a HTML component. And so the way we do this is we use the yew-HTML, and then from HTML unchecked. And so we're just taking the string that we're getting here and passing that directly into yew as direct HTML. We're not going to check it or anything like that. We assume that this is correct code. which in most cases is a practice you shouldn't do unless you really trust the library you're doing. This is just generating QR codes, so we should be fine in this case, but you should always think a little bit before doing this. Okay, we have now this seems to be missing something in my notes here. Let me just check that out. So it seems that we are missing a bunch of base components. Let's just quickly fix that. Okay, let's just have a look at the book, what it actually says. I think we should somewhere here. We went through all of this. We have the primary menu, have the sidebar. Right, and we have round here, but then transfer, we did this. Create base wallet structure, that's where we are right now. Right, so example. Okay, so we need to create dashboard, transfer, and transactions components. And so for this, we actually need to add websys. I have forgotten to add these things to my note. Let's just check out what we actually have here. So we're copying these things across. Okay. We did all of this. We created the structures. We have added the imports, but we haven't done this, right? We haven't defined a module for components. We have defined the QR, but we have not created the transactions table. Okay, so we have a whole bunch of things here that we still need to do. We've created the QR code. We've added the QR generator. We haven't created the QR code card. And so here we're defining a table that we haven't done either. So we still have quite a bit of time to go, but we're getting there, almost there. And most of these are just going to be placeholders. So we'll be through this in just a bit. Okay, right. Oh, and we're even building out the dashboard in this. Look, it's so long ago I wrote this chapter that I completely forgot what it's about. Which is kind of funny to look back on. Like, it's really comprehensive. I wouldn't have expected that. Okay, but let's see. So going back to our QR code here. So that one we had in here, right? But then we were also having a QR code card. And I'm just wondering, is that in a separate? I think that one also would be in here. So let's just define that one here. Right, and we have the transactions table we're going to define in just a bit. So let's add that function component. And for now, let's just make this a placeholder. Like, we're just going to add a string which is placeholder for the wallet address. And we'll make it look like this. Right, so we are adding just some basic HTML here, then some text saying receive payments, and then the QR code, scan to get the wallet address. I think that will do the trick. Let's get on with the transactions. Let's see, did we do pubmod QR code here? I think that would do the trick for that. Then we do the transactions table. For this, we're going to use the OneUp UI crate, and we will also use yew. Okay. And so the idea here is to create a transactions table we can reuse different places. So we want to have a transaction table on the dashboard that just shows the 5 last transactions, and then we want to have a more comprehensive transactions table on the actual transactions page. And similar to how you do this in React, we're going to make these components reusable across the application. That's just a good practice to do. So we're doing pub limit option, and then the number of, so limit will be the number of transactions we're showing. We can extend this later on with what page are you on and all of that. But for now, let's just keep it simple. Have a limit there, and hopefully it will be pretty obvious how you can extend this. And I'm just going to copy this across from the book. Let's see, because it's basically just a table that lays out the structure. We could use normal HTML tables here, but instead I'm using the table from OneUp UI simply because it will give a nice and cohesive feel to it. Okay, so that was the transaction table. We go back here, we add the module here, transaction table. We'll also go and add the common module to the, right. And so this basically finishes our common module. Next bit is the dashboard MOD. And we're going to have a bunch of different things to do here. So we have 4 different files we want to do. So we want to have a balance card. So how much money do you have on your wallet right now? And we want to have a recent transactions. What were the last transactions you did with your wallet? We want to have a wallet details and a wallet security Mostly just to give you an idea how to build up a UI in React. The two first ones we'll go into detail with. The other ones will mostly be for show. Okay, but let's add these modules right away. Balance card. And now if we start out with okay. See, let's start out with balance card. That seems like the right place to start. And I'm going to use prelude star. Okay. And I'm just going to copy this across from the book, and we will walk through it, right? So basically what this has is, it is just a card that has a bit of placeholders. So we have my Ethereum wallet, placeholder for the balance, and then a link to transfer. We probably should update this to be a link that's using yew-router, but for now let's just keep it this way. We can improve this later on. But let's keep it like that. And then we do recent transactions. And in this one, we're going to use the transaction table. So we'll use prelude start, and we will also use the transaction table we just created, components, common transaction. Okay, and then the actual component itself is going to be another function component, and we're doing recent transactions. And just like the previous one, this is going to be a function, recent transactions, that returns HTML. And this is a relatively simple one that just has a card with the transaction table, and we're going to limit it to 5 transactions. It says recent transactions in the heading, and that's pretty much our recent transactions card. Cool. Then wallet details. Wallet details, I'm just copying this one across because now our video is getting slightly longer than I had, or our live stream is getting slightly longer than I had anticipated. But it's basically the same again. We're creating a wallet or a function component. It has a placeholder for the address, and we are just adding all of these things into this one where you would be able to see what the address is, copy it to the clipboard. And likewise, we have the wallet security. This is another card. And with this, we're ready to build out the actual dashboard. And so the actual dashboard will use all of the components we have just defined now. Balance card. And finally, we want to also add our QR code. And so the dashboard is a relatively simple component. It will look like this. We are showing our balance, our QR code, we're showing our recent transactions, and then wallet details, wallet security. Okay, let's see, we haven't added dashboard into this one here, so let's just do pubmod dashboard. And let's check out if things are compiling at this point, because we've done a lot of changes and we haven't actually looked much at how things are working. So let's add wallet screens to the main application. This is /wallet/wallet screens, and see what happens over here. And hopefully we'll not have too many mistakes here. Like, it ought to just work out of the box, but then things never do. So let's see what happens. Oh, that's not too bad. That could be a lot worse. Oh. So what is it complaining about? Oh, right. Okay. Let's see, that was the first thing. Then second thing is in the recent transactions, we need to import no such thing as transaction table. Oh, that's because we're not re-exporting things, right? So we want to do pub use QR code star, and we want to do pub use transaction table star. So what this does is it re-exports everything from QR code and transaction tables, so that's available directly inside of the common module. Okay, what else do we have? Recent transactions, private struct. Just adding a pub here. Let's check if the other ones, public. Okay, that should be fine. So we still have a small error here. What is that? QR code props. Oh, derive. Right, and we are just fixing a little thing here as well. We will add trunk.toml. And inside this one, we are going to make it such that it watches the other directories. Right now, it's just watching the front-end directory, which means we need to restart it every time we make changes to the crate. We're adding it such that it watches the entire workspace now. I thought we... Right, that's a private one. We forgot to to make it public. Then it... Okay, let's go. We're in business. Things are compiling. Great. Okay, this is great. Let's just very quickly also populate the transactions We are not going to add a whole bunch of things to this in this video. Like, we will just make a very, very simple transactions view, which uses our transactions table and just provides a card with a header, transactions history, and some tin. Like, that will be good enough for this video. Same for the transfer. We're just going to make a placeholder for that one because that's going to be a lot more work. We're putting that into the module. So basically just we will have a send receive form eventually, but we don't have that right now. So it will look like this. We're just going to create a very, very simple placeholder. Likewise here, very simple placeholder. And then we're going to do pub mod transfer, and we're going to do pub mod transactions. All right, let's see. We then need to change our main function here. And so the first thing we're going to do is just import the things we have just made. So we've made the dashboard, we've made the transactions view, we've made the transfer view. And we want to add these ones down here. So instead of having these texts, we want to do dashboard and we want to do transfer. And we want to do transactions. Okay, let's see how this works out for us. And it compiles, so just a little bit more time and we're ready to see what this looks like. Okay, so here we go. Transaction history, a transfer placeholder, a wallet screen. Now, will you look at that? Like, we have the possibility of sending, we have the QR code, we have the recent transactions, the wallet details, the ability to copy, and some wallet security properties. So we're getting pretty far here. Like, obviously we can still do more. We need to implement a whole bunch of other things. So in the next application, we're going to set up, or in the next video, we are going to set up the state that actually stores the wallet, encrypts it, and uses a local browser storage. So we'll start out by setting up that state that keeps track of your wallet. And then we will make it such that we are ready to implement authentication, to implement integration with Web3 and all of that. But for now, we have a really solid foundation we have a really solid foundation for getting started with that. And I'm super excited to see you in the next live stream. So I hope you have enjoyed this. If you did, please subscribe. Please like the video and see you in the next live.